Hello, and welcome to another virtual author chat at the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm John Charles, and today the Poison Pen is delighted to have with us author Anne Claire, whose new book is Dead and Gondola. Before we begin, I do want to let those listening in know that the Poison Pen does have copies of this wonderful new series launched, and we would be happy to put one in the mail to you or hold one for you to pick up. Just give us a call or go online to the Poison Pen Bookstore, and we can connect you with what I think is one of the best books of the year. Now I'd like to welcome Anne.
Thank you so much. Oh, what a sweet introduction. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us virtually. I'm always fascinated by authors because I think most of them don't just spring out of nowhere. They have a past. So how does someone who started out mapping the world start plotting books? Because you do have a background in geography, don't you?
I do.
Geography or geology?
Geography.
Okay.
It's a little bit like the character in my book, and I'm not writing myself in the book, but I grew up in a small town on a farm in Pennsylvania. And then when I went to college, I just happened into a geography class and became fascinated with places. And that's one thing I love about books. You can go all sorts of places and travel and see different people in different worlds.
And so you decided you wanted to become a writer at some point. What was that like? What was your path to publication like for Dead and Gondola?
I did. I've been writing books for some years, and I have, like, probably, hopefully, well, maybe most authors, I have some that were never published, and then I published 2 cozy series before this. But Dead and Gondola, it combines what I love about cozy mysteries and traditional mysteries. Like, I love the setting. It's my personal little fantasy land to be in a bookshop, a historic bookshop up in the mountains, and access it by gondola. So I tossed in all my favorite things. And that was actually the setting, since you brought up geography, that spurred the idea of it. I wanted a bookshop and I wanted a new setting, and that came together, and that hopefully picks characters that matched or were good in that setting.
What can you tell us about the book without giving away too much of the plot for those who may be interested?
Well, it features 2 sisters. Their last name is Christie, and to their great lament, they can't find any genealogical tie to their favorite author, who is Agatha Christie. They have just become co-caretakers of their family's historic bookshop. It's the main character, who's the voice of the book. She's come home after many years abroad, and she's really excited. It's a new chapter, but being that this is a mystery, things happen, a murder. And
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, then they have to call on their inner Miss Marples. Their special skill is reading mysteries. They know mysteries, so this is how they start solving the crime.
Now, when I first heard the title, this is because I'm from Arizona, where we're practically flat in most of the state. When I hear gondola, I think Venice, but gondola is actually something different for you.
I did worry about that. And one of my best friends is in South Texas, and I quizzed her. I said, what do you think when you think gondola? And yeah, it's mostly Venice. So the artist was really great with the cover. They put the little gondola on there, and we talked up snow. But I'm talking about the ski gondolas, your own little glass carriage that goes up and down the mountains in ski areas. And I just love riding them. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be a great place to find a body or have a murder? It's these little glass tubes that go up and down, up and down.
In many ways, Dead and Gondola is not just a mystery, it's almost a wonderful homage to Agatha Christie, and that's what I enjoyed about the book. I mean, from the fact that when it opens, your characters are in a book discussion setting, reading one of Agatha Christie's mysteries, and then not to give away too much, but you kind of parallel things in that book in your own book. So if readers are familiar with the Christie story, they kind of can play along.
Thank you. Yeah, when I started it, I thought, oh, I know Agatha Christie, but I realized I really don't. There's so much I had to read, and it's really been fun to read her books. And then recently I've been reading a lot about her, because I realized, well, my characters know a lot about Agatha Christie. And so I've been reading some wonderful nonfiction about Agatha Christie, which I've just loved too.
The book in question in Dead and Gondola is the Sitford mystery. I think
Mhm.
it's got an alternate title that I can't remember.
I think it does. Yeah, it does. I can't
Because
remember
they did that
either.
with Christie's books between the US and
Mhm.
Great Britain. Um, in some ways, you also kind of bring in a lot of the classic Golden Age elements because the town is snowed in. So essentially, it's a locked room mystery. Everyone's trapped. The body's found in the gondola. You
Mhm.
get that kind of impossible crime of John Carr and things like that.
Mhm.
Were you consciously doing that, or was that just kind of subconsciously coming up in the writing?
I always love when some of my favorite mysteries are that type of mystery where, oh, you're locked in the snowy manor. I will read any book that someone is locked in the snowy manor. I like the Sitterford mystery or um, yeah, other Agatha Christie books and the classics like that. So I wanted a little bit of that, and I just imagined the snowy setting and what went with it.
How did the process of plotting come to you for this? Because I know for some writers, they just kind of let the story take them where they want. But in a mystery, especially, you have to really think about how do you plant the clues? How do you point
Mm.
fingers at different suspects? Was this a natural fit for you in writing the book, or did you find yourself having to go backwards and kind of reknit sections?
This first one, I knew what the killer was up to, and and so then I could work from there. And I did go back and sprinkle things in, and I found from this book and previous books I've written, I have to know who the killer is. Um, I I just have to, otherwise people ramble off in other directions. And I'm writing the second one right now, and I have had to go back and change a lot because I couldn't quite. It was the killer who was just giving me fits. Like I didn't know what this person was. Didn't know exactly what motivated them, and I have to know that, I think.
Your book, the start of the series, is marketed as a cozy mystery, and it really does embody many of the attributes of that subgenre. How would you define cozy mysteries? What do you think are the key ingredients?
I think one of the things I love about cozy mysteries, and one of the key aspects I think is the amateur sleuth, and I love that about Miss Marple, and I love that about modern cozy mysteries. Like you can be the bookseller, you can be the hairdresser, or elderly lady in her garden, and you have that special skill to solve crimes. And I really like that about cozy mysteries. And also, I've heard them called, um, mysteries. They're gonna keep you up reading, hopefully, but they're not gonna terrify you at night. They're nice murders, people sometimes say. I mean, obviously it's awful, there's a murder, but it's a cozy setting where friends and family, they work together. You know they're going to bond together and solve this crime.
Now, many successful series, especially in the cozy genre, need some type of frame, some type of hook. If I'm
Mhm.
reading correctly, Agatha Christie is the hook for your series. Is that correct?
That is Agatha Christie and books and bibliophiles. That's another thing I love about cozies. You can go in on a special theme, it's knitting or if it's food. And this time I was just imagining this bookshop and people who love books and two sisters who come from a family of booksellers. And so it's my cozy element, I think.
What kinds of research was involved in the book for you? Because I know many people think fiction just means you can make things
Mhm.
up, but you have to have some facts correct. Do you have any experience in the bookstore world, or is that more of your kind of dream of what they're like?
That's always a dream. I don't have much experience. My hometown is back in Pennsylvania, it's a small town up in the north of Pennsylvania, and have some acquaintances, friends there that run a bookstore, and I've been following them for years. A small town, small bookshop, and they have two cats. It's a wonderful shop, but it also has these struggles to keep a bookshop going in a town of 3,000 people
Mhm.
in northern Pennsylvania. And so I've always admired little small town bookshops, all independent bookshops, that the work they do.
And one of the other kind of pillars of the book is Agatha Christie. What kinds
Mhm.
of research did you have to do? Were you always an Agatha Christie reader? Did you come to her later in life? What kind of sources did you discover?
I'll say it's been later in life. I always watched her films, her the movies. And again, I thought, oh, I know her. But
Mhm.
I read this statistic recently. It was like you could read, I hope I get it right. You could read a different Christie once a month and it would take you 7 years. And then it said, well, by that time you'd forget the endings. And I do forget the endings. So I can read and reread Agatha Christie's, but I've been listening to a lot and reading a lot. And really, the most fascinating thing was learning more about Agatha Christie herself
Mhm.
through some of her autobiography and her travels around the world. She's a really amazing person.
She was very reticent. She didn't like to reveal a lot, but she really did have a lot of newsworthy events that occurred from her
Mhm.
disappearance to
Yeah,
her world travels to her
yeah,
second marriage. Yeah.
right. Yeah, I didn't know all that before I started that book. I didn't know about her, yeah, her second marriage to an archaeologist, and she went on digs in the Middle East, and the train trips that inspired her books, and yeah, like you said, her going missing, that great mystery.
Yeah. Did you discover any particular nonfiction book that you really enjoyed the most or found most useful? Because there is a lot of books about
Oh,
Agatha Christie.
there are so many. I really like her autobiography because it seems like, and she doesn't talk about all the stuff like her
Mhm.
disappearance, but I like, it seems like one of those books you could just pick up and look in the middle somewhere and there's a day in Agatha Christie or there's a thought about Agatha Christie. I really enjoyed that I just look at it in pieces sometimes and see what she was writing about. And I also like, it's a different one, I think, but Come Tell Me How You Live,
Yes.
when
Mhm.
she's off on the archaeological dig with her second husband, and there's a
Mhm.
first chapter where she goes shopping for warm weather clothing in England in the winter, and she's all frustrated. They're trying to sell her shorts, and she doesn't like zippers. Zippers are this fad that she has no time for. It's just really funny.
I think you had done a piece on different sources about Christie, and one of the
Mm,
things that I enjoyed was you also brought up there were two books that came out that were biographies of her characters, and they were originally published like
yeah.
decades ago, and I guess they've reprinted them about
Mhm.
Miss Marple and Poirot, kind of their own autobiographies.
Yeah, I love that. What fun that would be to just delve into like what was where in Miss Marple's parlor. And there's
Mhm.
a little map of the neighborhood, who was where, and you can just picture where she was walking around in certain books. It's great.
You mentioned some of her movies. That was your introduction to her, the television series. What would you consider to be the high points of the cinematic Christie oeuvre?
Oh, oh, I'm gonna say I'm not an expert at all at this. I have a friend who, several friends in film studies. I daren't answer. I've just been watching, just as a fan. I've been watching a lot of the Poirot
Mhm.
um, pieces that come on. You can get them from YouTube and we stream them, and it seems like, oh no, we're almost to the end of them. But I really enjoy all the Poirots and Miss Marples.
Do you have a favorite Marple? Because I know
Oh,
different people portrayed her.
oh, I'm horrible with names.
Is it Joan Hickson that
I
played the
think
first?
so. I think
Yeah.
so. If my father sees this, he has definite opinions and he knows them all, and I should know them, but I'm awful with names.
Let's talk a little bit about your writing process. How do you approach a book? Do you always know, like for this particular series, it's going to evolve. The characters are going to move in different directions. You have a
Mhm.
big cast of secondary characters. How do you keep track of them in a series? How
Mm.
do you kind of know? Are you the kind of person that knows by book five, this is what's going to happen to the sisters?
Mm. Oh, I wish I were that person. I always vow to be that person, just like I vow a lot of things when it comes to organization. I will outline each book, and I do have ideas for nearby books. I don't have, I'm not one of those long scope. I wish I could be outliners, but I definitely will outline each book. And like you say, you do have a cast of characters in Cozy Mysteries and Mysteries. Like there's a whole village, and so picking who gets to appear
Mhm.
is is always a challenge, and to try to keep down the numbers so people like me can remember the characters' names, but also have enough suspects out there. It's something that I really think about a lot, trying to do that.
Um, you have a very distinctive sense of humor. It's kind of understated, but it kind of flows through the books.
Thank
You
you.
came up with a term called marpling, and I'm going to originate that to you. Can you kind of expand on that?
Thank you. Um, the sisters, one of the main characters is their grandmother, who is quite Miss Marple-esque. She knits, she has fluffy white hair. Her job in the book chalet is to model cozy reading. So she sits there and she knits and she snoozes. But like Miss Marple, she's always collecting data and information and seeing things. And I think, like Miss Marple, people discount what women who are sitting there knitting and the cat on their lap might be noticing. And so Graham's marpling is just her being herself. She's always collecting information. She sees the ties between things. She notices the uncanny and the unusual and reports back to the sisters.
Yeah, I think it was really kind of a nice kind of tip of the hat to Christie's Miss Marple, because people do underestimate, they think fluffy little old lady, no,
Mhm.
but your character of the grandmother is actually the one who's most in touch with the younger generation, and she's the one that's doing all these kind of elements of detection that the two sisters might not be
Mhm.
fluent in.
Yeah, another character is the main character is Ellie, and then her niece, the daughter of the other sister. Um, so Ellie's sister, niece, and grandmother all live together, and the grandmother and niece are like best friends from different generations. Is how I think of them, and
Mhm.
so they teach things to each other. Like how Graham knows how to use TikTok, and she's learning how to do voice messaging on her phone, which is always fraught. And so she's a little bit like my own grandmother, who I grew up with for a long time and really loved, and was a great fan of books. And she was always trying new things. She
Mhm.
would get into any trend and learn about it and was interested. And I think that's some of Graham.
Let's go back again to Agatha Christie, because that kind of is a theme in the book. Many people would argue that she is the greatest of the Golden Age mystery writers. I would certainly second that. There are other people who would disagree. Where do you fall on that particular spectrum?
Oh, I'm going to confess again that I'm not enough an expert. This is another thing I keep saying. I'm adding to my list. I'm going to read all these other authors too, so I have more of a span of where she falls. I've loved reading about her interaction in the detection club and
Mhm.
their rules of writing mysteries, and it really makes me want to read. For winter, I think when I'm in between drafts, that's on my list of books to read or more of those old golden age mysteries.
Classics. Um, what was your own personal reading life like? If you want to go back into the past, did you start out in mysteries? Did you read in other genres? Who were some of the influential authors that kind of pushed you towards becoming a writer?
Hmm. I think I've just always liked mysteries, and I've always been a big reader. I'm an only child who grew up on a farm, on a 100-acre farm. And
Yeah.
so I had a lot of time to read. My parents are both big readers. My mother drew little children's books for me that for my family's eyes only, that kind of thing. Like they were just, so a really sweet thing to have. But we were always just great big readers and big book lovers and library users. And so I honestly can't say. I wish I could say, oh, I'm a Nancy Drew expert, but it wasn't even that. I've just always loved to read.
Do you have a book that you've gone back to time and again, one that you often reread, or are you, some people aren't rereaders?
I have become a rereader of Agatha Christie, actually,
Oh,
because I'll read through them and then I'll be surprised. And then I want to see what I can pick out, how she did it, or where the clues were
mhm.
in those books. So I have been rereading some of hers, and it really is, when I see the clue, I'm like, there it was, and I read right over it. So it's quite amazing to see how she did it.
I think that's one of the things that people who aren't familiar with her work don't realize. They tend to dismiss her as being someone who just writes plain mysteries. There's nothing fancy, or they're not literary or things like that. But that's her, I think, her real genius, because in among all those deceptively simple plot lines, she plants those clues so that you're seeing it, but you're not seeing it. And then at the end of the book, you think, there it was, and I should
Mhm. I
caught
think
it.
that's amazing. Yeah, I think I read somewhere, maybe it was about her. It said, well, readers, or maybe she said it, I think it was about her, but readers will deceive themselves. They'll read right across it and see what they want to see. And I think when you go back and look at what she's done, it's fun to try to find them.
Yeah, she came up with the least likely suspect. Everyone did it. No one did it. The most
Mhm.
likely suspect. She really is quite amazing. Do you
Yeah.
have a favorite Christie? I know it's hard to pick from.
It's so hard, and I've been thinking about this every time, every time I give a different answer. I mean, I've only done maybe 3 interviews, but each time I'll be like, I love that one, or whatever one I'm reading.
Mm,
I think The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is so amazing.
mhm.
Interesting forum there. I can't really talk about it because I don't want to give away Agatha Christie. I just love all the Miss Marples. I like Miss Marple.
Mhm.
And and Then There Were None is so
That's, yeah, and
amazing.
it shows that she could write dark. She wasn't always
Yes.
like the cozy little village mysteries. That was, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not graphic or there's nothing gory or violent, but
Mhm.
it's not a it's not a
No.
cozy by any stretch of the imagination.
No, is it Crooked House? Yeah, some
Oh,
were very dark, dark motivations, really conniving characters. She was, yeah, not just fluffy and all sweet.
now it could be coincidence, or perhaps it was planning on the part of you and your publishers, but for a long time there was always this marketing theme to Agatha Christie's books, A Christie for Christmas. Is that why your publisher decided to come out with Dead and Gondola right before the
Oh,
holidays?
I don't know. I had recently read about A Christie for Christmas. I, I honestly don't know if that was planned or if it was just the timing, but I love that it's coming out this time of year.
Mhm.
I'm zooming from Colorado and it's finally snowed in my part of Colorado. So it finally feels like, yeah, wintry here.
Well, you should take credit for it and use it for all it's worth as you push the book.
I did. Yes. Yes. We did that on purpose.
One of the characters I love the most is one who doesn't have a speaking role in the book, Agatha, the cat.
Mm. Mhm.
I know that it's kind of almost mandatory to have some kind of four-legged counterpart to the sleuths. What made you choose a cat rather than a dog?
Well, I am a cat person here. I have 2 doors that are shutting out 3 cats in the background here. We had an older cat and then we got 2 kittens for the pandemic. And one of the
Um,
kittens is actually the model for Agatha, a fluffy little Siamese. But I just like the interaction you can have with pets. So
mhm.
characters can talk to them, the pets can give minor clues by what they're doing. I think it's just fun to um, have them in there.
Yeah, they round out the character, give them a little bit more depth and humanity. You have been writing for a while. Now that you've published books, if you could go back to when you were first starting out as a writer, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh boy. Oh, well, I think it's always the same advice is just to keep going, to keep writing. And I think, at least with me, no matter how many, this is going to be no matter how many books I write, there's always a point where you think, oh, something's wrong here. I must stop, or some new idea comes up. And so I think that's the advice to myself always is just to keep going and get to the end. And then address other things, sprinkle in clues or change characters, or I'm always changing their names, change their names, what have you. But I think that's the advice, just keep going.
Hmm. What comes easiest for you as a writer, if there is anything? Is it plotting, characters, setting?
Mm.
And what is the most challenging?
I love I love settings. I'll often think up settings and then try to think of a story that fits in the setting. I really do like settings. And yeah, what else comes? Plotting, I'll start off and then I think I need to, I'll start and then I might revise in the middle. Like I'll go through chapters and then I'll think, well, that can't happen. We'll go on to this. But sometimes just sometimes figuring out how the sleuths figure it out, that's been very challenging, because especially in this series, I want them to be more Christie-like and to have that aha, voila kind of moment. And to think of how they're going to do that has been really challenging, like not encountering necessarily the killer and, the darkened basement or something, but figuring it out beforehand.
I imagine the means of murder must also present some research challenges too. You're
They
probably not
do.
skilled in killing off people in your own life.
Yeah, yeah, right. No research on that. It is hard. Um, yeah, in cozies you want it. Sometimes you can be very creative in cozies, but it can't be
Yeah, too
gory.
outside
It
the
can't be
box.
too up
Yeah.
close, and so you want something that's going to not disrupt the story. And then I'll find myself thinking, well, I bopped somebody on the head the last time. And so I'll go back and try to think up other means of murder, which again, Christie's so inspiring. There's some books that list all her means of murders. I think that book about poisons that I was,
He is for arsenic, yeah.
yeah, and it lists all her means of murders, and it's quite amazing. Like all the poisons she used, all the means, all the people she killed off.
She was very
Inspirational.
knowledgeable. Yeah, she worked as I think like a pharmacist or whatever they called it in Great Britain in the
Yeah,
pharmacy during the
dispenser.
wars. Dispenser, yeah. So she really did know her chemistry and her poisons.
She really did. Yeah, that's been interesting to read about too. I read a little bit about, there's a book about her poisons. It's just really fascinating. And it talks about like real life crimes that motivated her, inspired her, and even crimes that were solved because people had read her books
Yes.
and they recognized like that's that kind of poisoning.
Yeah.
So
I think that was one of her later books that she used a poison that was difficult to trace, but someone read one of her books and put the pieces together and thought, this is the same type of setup.
yeah, isn't that amazing? That's amazing.
Well, what's next for you as an author? You've got the first in the series. Can we expect more?
Yes, I am just finishing up the second in the series. It's again the Christie sisters, and it's still winter, it's February. And in this one, it's a little bit different, but still bookishly centered. Their cousin has started up a matchmaking service that matches people based on their bookish tastes.
Oh, that's so
And
clever.
I hope so. Yeah, I think that's a good, if novel writing doesn't come about, I'll just start up a bookish matchmaking service, right?
There you go.
So that's been fun to think about, a little bit different, but the same cast of characters and some new characters, new bits about their family and their background.
And have you selected a Christie title kind of as the frame for that, or is that something you'd prefer to keep secret?
Well, I'm bringing in various ones like last time, and but one of the ones that they're thinking about sort of in the background and has connections to the plot is the Mousetrap, the play. There's
Oh,
a scene involved in the theater, and so that's been fun to do that. I would love to see it in person. I've only watched it on video.
oh, yeah. And I guess there's a new movie that's kind of alludes to the whole mousetrap
I've
thing.
heard that. I have not been.
Yeah.
Can't think of its
How,
name. They all fall down. No, something.
See How They Run, I think
See how
is,
they run. Yeah.
yeah, that just came out this summer. How can readers discover more about you and your books? Do you have a website? What's your relationship with social media?
I do. If they want to find my books, a great place with all the links is to go to Penguin Random House and look up Dead and Gondola, and they have great links to bookshops and all sorts of sources. I am on Instagram as my favorite social media because of, again, my cats and books and cats. This is my favorite place to be in Colorado. So on Instagram, I'm Anne Claire Author. And then on Facebook, I'm Anne Claire Mysteries. I really should coordinate my names. And then I do have a website, which I keep meaning to update, but right now it's Novel Mystery. It's wixsite.com. But probably best Instagram and Facebook and Penguin Random House to find Dead and Gondola.
That's great. We're already stretching past our time limit. I can't believe how quickly it's gone by. Our guest author has been Anne Claire today at the Poison Pen. Her new book is Dead and Gondola. Is there anything else you'd like to share with readers before we have to go?
Well, I just really appreciate you talking with me, and I appreciate readers reading the book and considering the book. I personally have this huge to be read stack and stacks of books, so I appreciate the chance to talk about it.
Well, it's a wonderful book, Dead and Gondola, and if you've finished all your Agatha Christie's, this is the next place to start. Makes the perfect gift for mystery readers. I want to thank Anne for taking time to visit virtually with the Poison Pen, and all of you for listening into another author chat at the Poison Pen Bookstore.